Antony, thanks so much for your time. It's quite shocking when this kind of news comes through, when you have been covering this story for literally years and seeing every iteration of it. It's almost hard to believe, isn't it?
It's hard to believe, and obviously there's a little bit of caution until he actually is on the plane coming home. I mean, the fact is that Julian and his team made a decision that was best for him and to get out of prison. I mean, he's in this ongoing nightmare for years, essentially in Britain's most high-security prison, dying. I mean, there's no way to get around that in terms of his mental health and physical health. And as someone who's been writing about WikiLeaks since 2006, which is the beginning of WikiLeaks' life, when Julian first started writing about the documents. I mean, WikiLeaks has been the most essential tool for journalists in, frankly, my lifetime. And the idea that Julian and his team are pleading guilty, I mean, obviously it's up to him to make that decision. I think it's important to say, though, that there's no evidence that anything he did was illegal. It's really important to say that. The decision he's made, I respect 110%, but there is no indication that anything he did as a journalist, as the head of WikiLeaks, was illegal in any sane understanding of that word. But the idea that he would be coming home to see his wife and his 2 young kids, along with his family, friends and supporters, obviously is unbelievably welcome.
Yeah, it certainly is. I can't imagine how his family and legal team feel right now. Of course, they would have had prior knowledge to this. You would assume, Antony, they wouldn't have learned about this because they have obviously agreed to the deal, with a few caveats, I imagine.
And it's interesting that about a month or so ago, I remember there was a comment made by President Joe Biden, almost in passing, that he was considering some kind of way to end this drama. Now, I guess we'll find out more details in the weeks and months ahead about how this actually was done. There's obviously been lots of criticism over the years of the Labor government here and not doing enough. Now, again, we'll probably find out more about what they were doing behind the scenes. They certainly were not particularly massively supportive of finding an end to this. But if this is a way that he's allowed to leave Belmarsh, the charges from the US are ended, and then he's able to come home to Australia or wherever he wants to go, frankly. I mean, obviously, he should be a free man. And whether he chooses to continue journalism or doing something else, I mean, I think as I said, the legacy of WikiLeaks is so clear. And I think often we forget sometimes about that kind of thing because of his own personal dramas, which are undeniably important. But WikiLeaks as an organisation has released, in my lifetime, more vital documents about the way the world works and power than any other organisation I can think of. So the legacy to me is clear.
Absolutely. We've just seen a tweet, a post on X from WikiLeaks. It says, Julian Assange is free. He left Belmarsh maximum security prison on the morning of the 24th of June after having spent 1,901 days there. He was granted bail by the High Court in London and was released at Stansted Airport during the afternoon, where he boarded a plane. This statement just coming through right now from WikiLeaks. So, wow. So Julian Assange is free. According to WikiLeaks, he's left Belmarsh prison and he's on his way. Well, it doesn't say he's on his way home. He said he boarded a plane and departed the UK. This statement, bear with me, Antony, is a result of a global campaign that spanned grassroots organisers, press freedom campaigners, legislators and leaders from across the political spectrum, all the way to the United Nations. This created the space for a long period of negotiation with the US Department of Justice, it goes on to say, leading to a deal that has not yet been formally finished. We will provide more information as soon as possible. But after more than 5 years in a 2 by 3 metre cell, isolated 23 hours a day, he will soon reunite with his wife Stella Assange and their children, who have only known their father from behind bars. WikiLeaks published groundbreaking stories of government corruption, human rights abuses, holding the powerful accountable for their actions. As editor-in-chief, Julian paid severely for these principles and for the people's right to know. As he returns to Australia, this statement says, we thank all those who stood by us, fought for us and remained utterly committed in the fight for his freedom. Julian's freedom is our freedom. More details to follow. So that is comprehensive from WikiLeaks. From what we understand from that statement is Julian Assange is free. He is now on a plane. He got on that plane at Stansted Airport early on the morning of the 24th. It didn't say where that plane was headed straight away, but this statement goes on to say that he is returning to Australia. Let's bring Antony back there. So, look, Antony, we weren't sure. We were really cautious as this news came through because the reporting out of the United States was that, you know, Julian Assange's team had agreed to this plea deal. We thought and we understood from this reporting that still needed to be ticked off by a judge, but it all happened pretty quickly. As we understand it, we're getting the news, of course, hours after he was released from prison, but he is out of the UK on his way somewhere, and I assume that is not the United States.
Absolutely, and that's the best news imaginable. I mean, the thing I think also that's important to note here is that, and that statement from WikiLeaks made that very clear, that the fight for Julian's freedom was obviously for him as an individual, undeniably so. But the idea that a journalist could be potentially prosecuted in America under the Espionage Act, he's not an American citizen, is such an outrageous breach of any kind of guidelines. And that's, I think, why we're so glad that he's now out and hopefully coming to Australia or wherever he wants to go as a free man with his family. And so to me, the legacy of him and WikiLeaks is clear that I think when we look at how the last 20 years roughly of post 9/11 history will be written from Iraq, Afghanistan, the war on terror, Israel, Palestine, Gaza, the list goes on and on and on. WikiLeaks documents have been central to understanding all those issues and all those conflicts. And Julian has paid the most unbelievably high price. I remember visiting him in the Ecuadorian embassy when he was there for a number of years. I was with him in 2015, and he was in that embassy because he rightly feared what was going to happen when he left, which was to be, or essentially he was not left, he was forced out and put into Belmarsh for so many years. For a journalist, by the way, who was never charged with a serious crime. I mean, this is the craziness about this situation, that he for years and years and years was being punished, as you say, in the most high security prison akin to a terrorist, when he's a journalist. He hasn't hurt a soul, hasn't hurt anybody, hasn't killed anybody, hasn't done any harm to anybody. So I'm absolutely relieved that he's finally out. Amazing news.
Certainly. And now attention will turn to his health. I'm sure, you know, everyone will want to see Julian Assange and hear from him because they haven't heard from him since he was at the Ecuadorian embassy. I remember at the time, and the Ecuadorian embassy, quite strangely, in comparison, in contrast, is around the corner from Harrods, one of the most expensive department stores in the world. And Julian Assange would often stand on the balcony. He'd make quite profound speeches and statements to rallying supporters and protesters. But we could see then that even in the confines of the Ecuadorian embassy, his mental health was starting to decline. Of course, you know, we had vision of him having, exercise equipment within the Ecuadorian embassy, him able to get, some light there. That has very much changed. It's a very different situation when he's in Hindmarsh prison. And we heard from WikiLeaks there, he was in solitary confinement in a 2-by-3 metre cell for 23 hours a day, getting 1 hour of sunlight.
Laura, for years and years and years for no clear reason. For no clear reason. What was he doing in that prison for years?
Well, Antony, what's always been strange to me, and I think many in the Australian public, is how that he has been locked up and subject to these charges for years and years and years, when Chelsea Manning was pardoned by the Obama administration and has been living a free life ever since.
And as importantly, that a lot of the people that WikiLeaks exposed as war criminals and torturers in the US and elsewhere are living free lives, often pundits on the media, while Julian himself, the one, and others who work with him, released this information. They were the ones, and he particularly, who was punished for it. I mean, that's the great I don't know if it's an irony or a hypocrisy or an outrage. I mean, that's what it comes down to, that the people that he exposed, the outrages that he exposed, and I think in many ways what WikiLeaks did, I think, for the public is really give a great deal of insight into how power works. And I think it contributes to this sense that we have in the community in Australia, the US and elsewhere, that increasingly many people do not trust what they're being told by politicians, by journalists. Not all people, not all journalists, not all politicians, but that correct skepticism of power is warranted when the person who's leaking the information, Assange, he was the one locked up, not the people who were committing the crimes. I mean, I'd say it's similar to David McBride here in the Australian context. David McBride is in prison for leaking information about war crimes in Afghanistan, and yet the people who committed the war crimes in Afghanistan are walking free. It's that kind of hypocrisy that I think many in the public react to, rightly, with disgust.
Antony, it's so good to talk to you today on an historic day, and a day that Julian Assange and his supporters, I should say, have been waiting literally years for. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
we'll
Laura.
see you soon.
Thanks, Laura.